Imagine this. You are sitting at one of the finest restaurants in New York City. You have just finished a $13 dinner with your most important business clients. The waiter walks over, places the bill on the table, and you reach for your wallet. It's not there. You left it at home. You were sitting there, in front of your biggest clients. No cash, no way to pay. That moment of pure embarrassment. That one awful night in 1949. Accidentally created an industry worth $9 trillion today. And the man sitting at that table had absolutely no idea what he had just started. This is the real story of how the credit card was born. Not in a boardroom, not in a bank, but at a dinner table, over a forgotten wallet. Stay with me, because this story gets very interesting. The year is 1949. America's booming. World War II is over. Business is good. People are spending money. And one man is at the center of all of it. His name is Frank McNamara. Frank is 29 years old. He runs a small finance company in New York City called Hamilton Credit Corporation. He's smart, ambitious, and always looking for the next big opportunity. Now, Frank is not a poor man. He is doing well. But he is also not yet the big businessman he wants to be. On this particular evening in 1949, Frank arranged a dinner meeting at a restaurant called Major's Cabin Grill in Midtown Manhattan. He has invited two important people. One is Ralph Schneider, his business partner and attorney. The other is an important client Frank is trying to impress. The food is good. The conversation is going well. Frank is feeling confident. Then the waiter arrives with the bill. Frank reaches into his jacket pocket. Nothing. He checks his other pocket. Nothing. Frank McNamara had left his wallet at home. Now, let me tell you something. In 1949, there was only one way to pay for anything. Cash. That's it. No cards, no digital payments, nothing. If you didn't have cash, you didn't pay. Frank had to make the most embarrassing phone call of his life to his wife, asking her to bring money to the restaurant. He sat there, waiting in front of his client, red-faced, silent. But here's what separates successful people from everyone else. While most people would just feel embarrassed and go home, Frank McNamara sat at that table and started thinking, why do I always need to carry cash? Why can't there be a better way? That question, asked in embarrassment. On a Tuesday evening in 1949, changed how the entire world spends money. The next morning, Frank went to his office and called Ralph Schneider. Said, Ralph, I have an idea. Ralph said, okay, Frank, what is it this time? Frank explained. What if there was a card? A small card that a person could carry in their wallet. And when they went to a restaurant, they could just show the card. The restaurant would trust that the person would pay later. Ralph was quiet for a moment. Then he laughed. Frank, why would any restaurant trust a piece of cardboard? Why would anyone use it? But Frank didn't give up. He had seen something at that dinner table that most people missed. He understood one simple truth about human psychology. People hate embarrassment more than they hate debt. Just think about that for a second. Frank didn't just see a payment problem. He saw a social problem. Nobody wants to sit in a restaurant and say, I can't pay. Nobody wants to look poor in front of clients or a date or their family. If you gave people a way to never have that moment again, they would use it. Guaranteed. Frank also understood the business side perfectly. He had been running a credit company. He knew that people borrow money all the time. He knew that businesses give credit to trusted customers. This was nothing new. What was new was doing it at the dinner table, in real time. So Frank and Ralph sat down and worked out the plan. Here is how it would work. Step 1. The person pays a small yearly fee to get the card. Step 2. They use the card at restaurants. The restaurant serves them. Step 3. The card company pays the restaurant. Step 4. The cardholder pays the card company at the end of the month. The card company makes money from the yearly fee, from a small percentage charged to the restaurants. Simple, clean, elegant. But here was the big problem. To make this work, Frank needed restaurants to agree before he had any customers. And he needed customers to sign up before any restaurants agreed. The classic chicken and egg problem. Nobody wants to accept a card that nobody uses. Nobody wants a card that nobody accepts. How do you solve that? Frank McNamara decided to solve both problems at the same time. He spent weeks walking into restaurants in New York City, one by one, door by door. His pitch was simple. I will send you customers, wealthy customers, business people. They will come to your restaurant and spend money. All you have to do is accept this card. I will pay you within 60 days. You take zero risk. Some restaurant owners said no immediately. Some laughed at him. But some listened. By early 1950, Frank had convinced 27 restaurants in New York City to accept the card. Now he had restaurants. Now he needed people. Frank went to his network, his business contacts, friends, lawyers, accountants, doctors. He sent letters. He made phone calls. He explained the concept. Never be embarrassed at a restaurant again. Use this card and pay at the end of the month. The first batch of members was small. 200 people. That was it. 200 people with a small cardboard card in their wallet. The card had a simple name. The Diners Club card. Named after, you guessed it, dining at restaurants. The first transaction happened in February 1950. Frank McNamara himself walked into Major's Cabin Grill, the same restaurant where he had forgotten his wallet, sat down, ordered dinner, and paid with his little cardboard card. No embarrassment this time. The waiter took the card, wrote down the details, and that was it. A $13 dinner, paid with a piece of cardboard. History was made, and Frank called that moment the first supper. Now here is where the story gets really interesting. Frank expected slow growth, thought maybe a few hundred members in the first year. He was wrong, very wrong. By the end of 1950, just 10 months after launch, Diners Club had 10,000 members. By 1951, 42,000 members. Restaurants were calling Frank, asking to be added to the list. Members were calling Frank, asking to use the card in other cities. The Diners Club card went from 27 restaurants in New York to restaurants across the entire United States, and then the world. By 1953, just 3 years after that first embarrassing dinner, Diners Club became the first internationally accepted charge card. People were using it in the UK, Canada, Cuba, and Mexico. Think about that timeline. February 1950, Frank pays a $13 dinner with cardboard. 1953, people in 4 countries are using his idea. Frank McNamara had accidentally built something he never planned to build, a global financial system. Now, the big banks were watching. They didn't like what they saw. American Express, which was already a powerful financial company, launched their own card in 1958. Bank of America launched the Bank America card in 1958 as well. This later became Visa. Mastercard followed shortly after. The race was on, and it all started because one man forgot his wallet at dinner. But wait, before we celebrate this invention, we need to talk about what it really created. Because every great financial invention has 2 sides. The credit card gave people freedom. No more carrying cash, no more embarrassment, easy payments anywhere in the world. But it also gave people something dangerous, the ability to spend money they don't have. Before credit cards, if you wanted something you couldn't afford, you simply couldn't buy it. But that was it. End of story. After credit cards, you could buy it today and worry about paying later. And humans, being humans, are not very good at worrying about it later. Today, in 2024, Americans alone carry over $1.3 trillion in credit card debt. That is $1.3 trillion of money spent that people are still trying to pay back. The average American household carries $7,951 in credit card debt, and the average credit card interest rate is over 20%. That means if you carry a $7,951 balance and only pay the minimum, you will be paying it off for over 20 years. And you will pay almost double in total. Frank McNamara solved one problem, embarrassment at the dinner table. But he accidentally created another, billions of people trapped in debt cycles they can't escape. That is the hidden cost of one forgotten wallet. Now here's the part of the story that most people don't know. Frank McNamara, the man who invented the credit card, never became the billionaire you might expect. Frank sold his share of the company for $200,000. That sounds like a lot. But remember, Diners Club went on to be worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and the credit card industry is worth trillions today. Frank walked away from all of that for $200,000. Why? Nobody knows for sure. Some say he needed the money quickly for personal reasons. Some say he didn't believe the company would grow as big as it did. But the real tragedy? Frank McNamara died in 1957. Just 7 years after his invention changed the world. He was only 40 years old. He never saw Visa. He never saw Mastercard. He never saw online shopping. He never saw the $9 trillion industry his embarrassing dinner created. He left behind a wife and 3 children, and a cardboard card that quietly took over the world. Frank McNamara didn't sit down one morning and say, "I'm going to revolutionize global finance today." He forgot his wallet. He was embarrassed. Instead of just going home and forgetting about it, he asked one simple question. Why does this have to be this way? That question, that single moment of discomfort, created an industry that processes over $10 trillion in transactions every single year. Every time you tap your card at a coffee shop, every time you buy something online, every time you pay at a restaurant, you're completing a transaction that started with one man's forgotten wallet. In 1949, at a $13 dinner in New York City. History is not made by perfect plans. History is made by people who turn their most embarrassing moments into questions, and their questions into action. That's the real story of money. There are hundreds more stories just like this one. Stories of accidents, mistakes, and failures that quietly built the financial world you live in today. If you want to hear them, you know where to find me. I'll see you in the next one. If this made you think differently about money, hit subscribe. New financial history every week.